We're here at Automobility LA, which is the precursor to the LA Auto Show. And one of the most exciting things that's happening is the conference program that's been developed over the past year. I'm sitting with John Ellis, who is on the executive, what is it, the advisory
board.
The advisory board, and I want to hear, how does it go? Because I just got through talking to Andy Gritz, and he said, you got a week off, and you're going to start doing this again. Tell me about your experience being on the advisory board for
it's like 10 days, I think. I didn't realize it was a week. I thought it was like more like 10 days.
10 days off, yeah.
So the advisory board is a collection of a number of folks from the industry distributed from city, OEMs, original equipment manufacturers on the automotive side, software side, tier ones and others, representing a diverse...
You're not a car guy?
I'm not a car guy.
You're a software guy.
I'm a software guy,
Okay.
but I used to work for a car company.
No.
So we have 3 goals as a board. Number 1 is to provide sort of an industry view and guidance in terms of what's the goal overarchingly of messages that come out of a show.
Okay.
And so for this year, for example, it is all about the fact that there was not much of a car ownership. It was the full change to full mobility, what's happening with shared.
Okay.
Last year we did a little bit about some alternative modes. So we were looking at Hyperloop. We were looking at the flying motorcycle.
Wait a minute. The flying car, though, I'm not going to satisfy until George Jetson's flying car folds up into a briefcase. That's when we've really...
Well, we'll see where we go from there.
On that, eh? Okay.
Number 2 is to make sure that from the standpoint of diversity, we have enough representation around the industry on the panels and whatnot to bring an audience like this together. Because
pull it down
too
just
close?
a little
Sorry.
bit too close, yeah.
A little bit in terms of diversity to make sure we have stuff going on. And then number 3 is amongst ourselves to do some networking to help promote Automobility LA outside of LA.
Right.
It's an international show with an international audience, and so many of us using multiple different languages, social media, and others. We travel the world, and we're sort of ambassadors on behalf of the city of LA and Automobility LA.
Don't you find it interesting how the car show business is changing along with the technology insertion? I'm a born and raised Detroiter. You're a longtime Chicago guy. Both of those towns have car shows, right? They're just kind of following the pattern here, though, that Automobility LA is putting a tech show in front of that and really stirring up the interest level. Do you see this happening around the world?
Yeah. So Automobility LA actually started originally in its conception as Connected Car Expo.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it had a good 2-year run as that brand. While that brand was going on, Frankfurt took notice, and they started their mobility house or mobility show in 2015. LA said, okay, great, we love competition. We're going to up it. So rebrand, rename, some other additional things.
Yeah.
And then Automobility, which was the Detroit show, also came in, right? Mm-hmm. We welcome them. We had no issue, right? Frankfurt show, people were here. New York show, people were here. DC, Detroit. Yeah. We welcome them because the competition's good. It helps us rise up. So this year, raising up. Last year we introduced the Design Challenge, Top 10. This year we rounded out with a hackathon. Okay. First ever hackathon at an auto show.
Yeah, interesting.
Had 101 people show up, 16 teams competed, and it was a fantastic event. So for us, we like the competition outside the auto industry. It constantly raises our game, which allows us to keep talking to the OEMs about there's a future. Instead of following OEMs, we want to be leading and having the OEMs follow our conversations.
Well, you used to work for a car company, and you know that traditionally the OEMs are the king of the universe. All commands come from above and feed down through the supply chain. Are you seeing a change in that because of all this technology innovation and like startup involvement?
We are in at least 2 ways. One is a lot of the tech. We have 2 types of tech. We have traditional automotive tech, which is coming from our traditional tier ones, and they're responding to the OEMs and building and developing in that regard. But the other tech is what we're going to call this West Coast tech, this we don't care, we're just going to innovate and kind of throw it in.
Like a company we know well.
Exactly, right? And so what happens with that is the OEMs suddenly, for the first time ever, are realizing, wait a minute, they're not suppliers. And so when they choose to partner, it is partner, or it is use, or it is collaborate. It is not, I am OEM, I dictate you are supplier, you will hit my calendar schedule. And I think that, from a culture standpoint, has been a shock, especially as we look at when Google and Apple came in and the behaviors that they both exhibited. Yeah, we'll party with you, but we are not your suppliers.
Yeah, they didn't like that.
The OEMs are beginning to see that the world is changing. And if they're not careful, the traditional hierarchical OEM sets, tier ones come along, is going to get disrupted all over the place. They're not immune to business model disruption.
You're absolutely right. I see that they are responding to it and they're adapting to it, and whether they like it or not, they're being forced into it. And the suppliers are also kind of having to adapt. I've been doing most of my work with silicon. So we're a tier 2. We seem to have a very indirect connection to the car makers and their requirements. And one of the things that we've noticed that's especially problematic is we move to a highly automated driving or autonomous cars. The requirements specification is almost impossible to obtain because it's so unknown. You know, we go to a car show like this and these requirements were dictated 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they're coming out in sheet metal. But in your event, the automobility event, you're talking about things that are going to happen in the future. What kind of a responsible role do you feel you play in that?
So we play a role, and then how responsible or what kind of accountability? You know, there's probably 3 ways to look at it. One is there's an accountability in terms of raising awareness to the business model. A lot of people, and part of what Automobility LA is trying to do is raise awareness that there are people who build transportation.
Yeah.
And there are we think we're big dogs. We're very small. And there are the people who use transportation, the cities, the states,
massive
businesses. And so part of what we're trying to do is say, okay, hey, OEMs, world, whatever we do, whether we do it or it gets done to us, there is major impact around the world. So from an accountability, it's more, we're trying to hold the OEMs and the transportation industry accountable to a higher goal. Number 2, part of it is also raising awareness is, hey, I don't know what the answer is, but this idea of prescriptiveness to the point of complete risk elimination, I don't know where we go or how we balance it, but having both, you and I have had long conversations and long history together.
Yep.
I'm not trying to advocate irresponsible behavior, but there needs to be a better conversation about what is risk, where does risk manifest itself, and then how is risk managed. And so part of Automobility LA, we bring cities, states, the federal government, like we want to have a conversation because prescriptive reading of the law that says shall is causing OEMs to behave as they should as a public company very conservatively, allowing for others who may not necessarily understand what happens when you move a car or a 4,000-pound device at speeds approaching 100 miles an hour.
And could be driven by a 16-year-old.
Or not driven at all. Driven by silicon, right?
Yeah,
so
or software.
Part of what we're trying to accomplish here is lay the groundwork for a conversation that is bigger than the 6-second Vine, 140-character tweet, or the political landscape that we find ourselves in, and whatever it might be, to create a real conversation that allows us to debate in a friendly, non-competitive way what the future should be.
Well, as you know, my role in this has always been about the collaboration side, whether it was the Geneva Alliance trying to push the open source mentality into the auto industry, and now with the program that I'm involved in with Renesys, which is their Renesys Autonomy program. That's based on the idea of having the next generation of automotive engineers that are learning their skills in a university. This is the University of Waterloo, taking and developing algorithms that will be implemented in cars 5 to 10 years from now, but putting them into a living laboratory that's done on city streets. We engaged with QNX, which of course has a great history in software for the car, and also the city of Stratford, so we have a smart and connected city angle, because transportation is a totally different thing in the next 10 years, right?
Oh, next 10, next 5.
Well, yeah.
I mean, next 5, next 10. I mean, there's not a year that we're going to throw out that it's not changed somewhere, right?
That's why you can predict the future. You can pick any day you want, and you'll be right, right?
Well, we won't be wrong. We may not be right, but we won't be wrong, right? That's great.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time, John. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for the great show you put on, and we'll look forward to working again.
Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, we'll look forward to the 18. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.